Hey folks, if somebody just joined, if you wouldn't mind chatting in to the chat box, if you can see me and hear me, welcome, come on in. While we wait for everybody to get in, there's a quick college quiz on the board. Feel free to take a look at that, take a peek. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. So please chat that in. Hi, Kamalani. Great, thank you so much. Welcome. Hey, Rick, can you hear me, Rick? Excellent. Thank you, Davis. Nicole, fantastic. All right, Rick. Great. I'm going to give it some time. We have actually a big crowd tonight, so I'm going to let everybody get in. And while we wait, you can attempt the college quiz. Feel free to pick a number, question number, maybe an answer or so. I'll give you the answers at the end, maybe. Hi, Sandy. Anik, welcome. Colin, great. Excellent. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. We're 1 minute over, no problem. I'm expecting about 50 other people or 60 other people, but it will be recorded. As you can see on my chat, it's going to be recorded, so you'll be able to watch the replay if you have to jump out early at cosd-futurology.org/locker. Okay. And to make sure you're here in the right spot, we are tonight doing 5 steps to creating a great college list. So hopefully you're in the right place. Hi, Molly. Hi, Karen. What's up, Ryan? Kiku, excellent. You go from taking your practice test to watching my webinar, and I think you're coming for another practice test tomorrow. Hey, Zane. All right, great. Well, we have a nice crowd tonight. Hopefully you can see me and hear me. All right, well, why don't we get started, everybody? Again, thank you for coming tonight. We'll be covering a webinar on 5 steps to creating a great college list. If you haven't met me before, my name's Anthony Russomanno. I'm with Capistrano Unified. I'm part of Futurology. We're the college and career planning service program for the district. We hold one-on-ones with families. We run different events such as this, so we really appreciate you coming tonight. I've been doing college and career planning and test prep for over 20 years, and I'm really excited to sit with you tonight and talk to you about creating a great college list. So with that said, I'm going to go through some housekeeping and stuff. Again, some of you are already getting familiar with the chat area, which is fantastic. Hi, Naomi, welcome. One of my counselors is here. I love it when they're coming. So again, my email is on the board right here, ajrussomanno@capousd.org. If there are any additional questions tonight or after when you go home, or if you watch it back, feel free to reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, and hopefully I'll get back to you really quickly. So that's number one. Number two, as I mentioned, we are a district-wide service that's free for students in our district. You can have one-on-one appointments. I've already seen a lot of people that I've seen before on the call that have met with my counselors or myself. We meet with families in the mall to have appointments to help in the college and career planning process. We also do the group workshops. So you could always go to our website, cosd-futurology.org. We can schedule appointments as you did for tonight's event. You can also register for different events. So I make sure I want to say that to everybody here. Okay. So tonight I have 3 simple objectives. Okay, that's one is just to talk to you about those steps that I'm going to lay out for you. I'm going to try to simplify this process for you. Okay. Number 2, show you some tips and some tools as you create that list. And then number 3, give you some action plans so you can walk away and actually take some action before you either meet with one of my counselors or before you start applying and doing that whole process of applications. Okay. So that's my objectives tonight. In terms of housekeeping, again, a couple things. If you have a question or comment, some of you are already commenting in the chat area. Please make your comment in the chat. If you have a question, you can mark it as a question. I also put this as a sticky message in the chat. So you can click the bubble next to your comment and that marks it as a question for me. So as I go through tonight's presentation, I really encourage you to participate, ask the questions you want to ask. Again, it'll help move this presentation. It'll help you get your answers you want. Again, you could always reach out to me for my email afterwards, and I can answer those questions. But again, mark that comment as a question, and it'll be helpful for me, okay? So that's really important. All right, and so that's just some basic housekeeping. Tonight, we might do some polls, and those polls will pop up on the screen. I'm going to do my first poll. I just kind of want to get a sense of what students, what ages that we have. So I'm going to send out that first poll, and here it comes. It's just basically, what is your grade level? And I just kind of want to get a sense of who's in the room tonight. So if you can please answer. If you're a parent, just tell me what grade level that your son or your daughter is in, and that just kind of gets me an idea. Okay, so juniors are leading the way right now, and I have a lot of underclassmen, not even in high school, which is fantastic. So you're starting the process earlier, so that's great. Welcome, welcome. Okay. All right, so we mainly have juniors right now, which is great. This is really, we're in that market for creating a shopping list for colleges right now. So that's perfect for you. For those that are younger, you can just get a head start. For my 6th through 8th graders, this is kind of just getting your feet wet and understanding the process that we have, okay? All right, I'm going to end that poll. So thank you, everybody, for that one. And then my next question for the poll, I'm going to do one more, is if just you have started your college list. Being that I have mostly juniors, I just kind of want to know who's started your college list. Even if you have 2 colleges on the list. If you've started it, I'm assuming my 6th or 7th graders haven't, but okay. Great. And I always love participation. It helps me. It makes me excited that everybody's engaged here. So a lot of you have a list, okay? And we're going to talk about that. So if you have a list, hopefully some of the stuff I talked to you about tonight will make you go back and rethink some of it if you need to do that, okay? All right, I'm going to end that poll. Thank you, everybody, for that as well, okay? All right, and like I said, tonight, questions go in the chat area if you can. Eileen, welcome. RJ, hi. So we got a nice crowd tonight. All right, I'm going to move on. So as we get started, I just want you to understand there's thousands of colleges in this country. So many universities out there, some we've never heard of before. And I mean, we're talking over 4,000. And a lot of times we just don't know which one we should apply to, which one's right for us. And that's kind of what I'm here to do, is kind of help you along the way. Typically in this process, though, what we've been seeing, my counselors and I, is a lot of people come in with the college in mind, but they don't know enough about that college. And so they start with the college first. So they kind of get information from the TV, from friends or family, and then they go, oh, here's my college. My 10-year-old just said this to me on the drive to school the other day. I was driving him to elementary school, and he goes, Dad, I want to go to Duke. I go, wow, where did that come from? I have no idea. Well, I know why, because he watched the NCAA basketball tournament and he saw them on TV quite a bit. And he goes, and they're pretty good. And so he says Duke, but he just sees that on TV and then he states a school. And he doesn't know much about Duke. I don't know if he knows it's a really small school in a small college town, if he would want something like that. So again, starting with the college is kind of a typical thing. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is changing that process about how we go and evaluate schools and change how we look at the paradigm of how we look at colleges. So that's what we're going to do tonight, okay? So where do we start? And this is usually the biggest question I get. How do I figure out what I'm looking for? Okay. What am I looking for? And that's a really big question, and when I help students, or when my counselors help students develop a college list, there's a certain factor that many families, many students, they don't even think about, and they should consider, but they don't. By the way, this is a little picture of my son, Ben. He's 8 years old, and we were in Zion over spring break, and there he is contemplating the world. I don't know what he's thinking about or what he's doing, but I know he's deep in thought. And in Zion, you can't use your cell phones. You can't use anything. You're really there with yourself, okay? So we're on the mountains hiking, and again, you have time for thought and to collect your thoughts, okay? And there's Ben doing that. So it was a really great trip. But if you don't have a mountain nearby, as my son Ben did, what do you do? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, okay? So I'm going to take you through the 5 steps of creating that college list, okay? They'll be on each slide. Again, this will be recorded on our website. They'll have the recording. I'll show you where. And we'll also have these slides as well as all the handouts for tonight, or anything that I cover. So what you'll be able to do is reference those. So don't worry, oh, Anthony, you went too fast. You'll be able to access everything. So I want to make sure you understand that. Okay, so let's talk about that first step. And that first step, okay, is what I call self-expertise. Now, if you had an hour, okay, let's just pretend if you said, Anthony, what could I do? What's the most important hour I could spend and make the biggest impact on creating my college list? What would that be? Are we talking about? And to me, that answer is self-reflection. If you can take 1 hour, now I prefer you take more, of self-reflection, you're going to be so much further along in this process. And so when we talk about where do we start, that's where we start, is creating that self-expertise, finding out who you are, okay, and what you want. Not an easy question, by no means. And I understand I was a teenager once, and I have teenagers almost coming up. It changes, it can change, and finding out who we are, it's not an easy thing to sit down. Like I said, find a mountain. If you can't find a mountain, I'm going to talk about some assessments you can do. So again, I'm going to break this process down in simple. So step 1 is that self-expertise, that self-discovery. How do we find these things out? What are your values? What's your personality like? What are your skills? By the way, I'm going to go in and out of this video because I don't want you to get caught up in watching me and instead of listening to me and watching the slides. I'm Italian. I use my hands a lot. You'll see them moving. So I'm going to shut off sometimes and then I'll reappear and everything. But I don't want you to get caught up just watching me. Plus, I'm very animated with it. So again, let's find out who you are and how do we do that? What are the experience you're having? What are your strengths? What are your passions? Okay. And so we're going to talk about a couple different assessments of finding that out and finding out who you are. And also exploring your interests, such as, are you talking to people? Are you working? Are you having an internship? And different things that you can do with that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to change your approach. Instead of starting with the school, which I showed you that typical slide, instead of starting with the school, we need to start with you. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to do. Okay, it's not an easy task. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing. It's an ongoing process. Okay, but you're going to actually make the process more enjoyable if you start with you and not the school, because then you're doing things for you and not the school. Too many times I get families that say, what do I need to do to get into Stanford? Or I'm doing this because I think you have to do it for this school. Or then we're doing it for the wrong reasons. But if you start with you and you do things because of you, it's going to work out much nicer. Okay, so that's kind of where I want to go with this. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to just show you this slide. This is a sample, okay, of an assessment that I'm talking about. This one's from Dr. Stephen Antonoff. And what it is, and I have this on our website, so if you actually go here, and I'm going to actually start writing on the board. Okay, so right here, is where I have all these documents. So this assessment, this college planning values assessment, will be there. Okay. I also have these other ones in this star. So this one, and I'll just give you a quick overview, is basically you're going to rank these factors, okay, or these items that we find are the most important things. Okay, in this particular case, these are the most important things that they found for students. Okay, now there could be more values here than you might think of, but for most part, they got these 11 reasons that were the most important. And you're supposed to rank them. So for example, if you thought, I want to find a place to learn and study, I'm going to rank this number 1. That's most important to me. So you would go through this and start ranking things. Oh, I want to make a lot of money. I might rank that one second. And you go down and you rank all these. And the idea is you rank them from 1 to 11, from the most important to the least important. Okay. And then what you'll be able to do is from these determine what you find it says about you. Okay. And these top 3 priorities, whatever they might be. Now you might say to prepare me for a career. Let's say this one was 3. Or you go, oh, no, I think this one's 3. All right. So you need to decide which one. Or you want to say, no, fun's more important than my career. I don't know what's going to be. And then from there, this will determine your ranking. And then within this assessment, it gives you an idea. For example, if you chose that A was number 1 for you, then you really need to explore the academic character of the college you're considering. Okay. Now, obviously, all colleges find importance in academics, but this is what we're talking about. Are they challenging the students? What kind of experiential learning are we having on campus? You'll be looking into more things like that than necessarily, are there any pubs around campus? Because that's more social and fun. So that's what you can do. So this, again, this is one of many assessments that we're talking about. Okay. So I'm going to stop there and make sure you guys are going to check the chat. Just make sure there's no questions in here. Okay. So nothing so far. Fantastic. So this is one sample of an assessment that I want you guys to be looking at. I'm going to show you a few others, but I'm not going to break them all down. Okay. But once you understand yourself a little bit more and what you're looking for, okay, it's going to help us define what's important to us, what success looks like, and help us ultimately find some colleges that fit that. Okay. It's on us to figure this out. Okay. And parents, it's going, if your parents on the call, it's important for the students to figure some of this stuff out. We can't spoon feed them that. They have to figure out what's important to them. It's going to help make the process a little bit easier. Okay. So this is that one first college planning assessment. Okay. Let me show you another one. Okay, this one is a Holland code. And if some of you are familiar with this, it's going to give you some different results. Now, this one is a quiz, and it's going to ask you questions like, do you like to be outdoors? Do you like to make decisions? Do you like to get things done? Do you like details? And you just start checking different things off. Oh, well, maybe I like this thing. I'm about this. And when you start doing that, it's going to take you in, from what you like, or are you able to sing? Can you dance? Are you practical? Are you more self-confident? And then once you do this assessment, and these assessments, by the way, are really short. So like I said, if you had an hour and you took an hour on a Sunday, you can get through 3 or 4 of these assessments, and it's going to help you so much. What I like about this one, and I have the link again on our futurology.org/locker, it's going to give you, okay, it's going to see right in here, it's going to give you your codes. It's going to say what's the highest, what's the lowest. And then from there, it actually ties into ONET, which actually gives you some career outlooks. So it's going to give you a work environment as well as a work personality, and ties it to a career summary. And that career summary, you'll be able to just click over and say, oh, look, architecture, or it's going to give you some clusters of careers that you can research. Okay. I have a question coming in. Rick wants to know, when and how many times should a student take personal assessments? Rick, it's a great question. It really depends on where you are at this moment and what else are you trying to find out. Some of the assessments that I'm giving or I'm talking about, like this one ties into career. The college planning assessment that I just covered is just about finding colleges. So maybe you need both. So it also depends on how extensive you're looking and how much deeper you need to go. For those that haven't really dug deep at all, they might be taking 4 or 5 assessments. For some of those students I talk to, they kind of have a good sense of self already. They might not need as many. They might just be looking at a college assessment, or they might know the career already and why they want that career. So it really is going to depend on the student themselves. What I encourage students to do is to look at some of these assessments. Some will work better for some, others will work better for others. It really depends on where you are in this process. For my younger students, I would take a bunch of these, and I would start with also getting some hands-on experience in your schools, taking classes that help you decide that. So it's not just about an assessment. It's also about getting experiences and finding those experiences and those strengths. So it's not just a personal assessment. It's actually going out and doing things around those areas. So there's really no formula for how many and when. Some students, you might, if you take it now as an 8th grader and then by 11th grade, you might change quite a bit. So again, you might take an assessment when you feel like something's going and is different about you. Okay, you might be more social now, and then you might be more conventional later. That could be a possibility. So you might want to retake it, especially if there's a 3-year gap. I wouldn't have such big gaps. But again, as you find more stuff out, you might take other assessments or different assessments. So again, it depends on where you are at the moment. Okay. Now, I'm going to make a point here, which is really important, and I'll kind of tie it into the college. So, like, for example, how knowing your strengths can help you pick the right school. Okay. I'm huge about people finding their calling. People who thrive at the work that they do. My wife's a teacher, and it's a calling for her. She really thrives as a teacher, and she definitely uses her strengths. She's really patient. She teaches 1st grade, and she's been elementary school, and it definitely feeds her strength of kindness and generosity. But let's just say you're a student and you have those same types of strengths or values. Let's say it's kindness, generosity, it's teamwork. Okay. Now, if you're that kind of kid with those type of strengths and or values, if you were to go to a super competitive school, okay, you probably can do the work. Okay, but you won't necessarily thrive. Not that you wouldn't, but for the most part, maybe not thrive, because the nature of a school like that's highly competitive and it's cutthroat. If you heard about it, if people who go to law school especially, it's very cutthroat. That nature of it just violates kind of the essence of who you are. You might not like it at that school. And that's why finding out what your strengths and those values and your personality is, not just in this case, the Holland Code does a work personality, but also your college personality. You might not be as happy at that school, and that's how it comes into play. Okay, so that's why it's so important to kind of take some of these assessments. There's another one out there that costs a little bit of money called Strengths Finder. My counselors and I have taken that one. That's a really good one to find some of your strengths. Naviance, which you guys have access to through the district, has one where you can find some career clusters. Okay, so anyway, moving on. I'm going to clear this. We have another. Oh, so Ryan you want to go back and understand the grading system? Well, Ryan, really what it is just a quiz. It's going to ask you questions. Do you like helping people with problems? And the certain types of questions they ask you fall into a category. Is it a social area? Is it more artistic? And so the way it grades is it's going to give you what your top 3 codes are. So for example, in this example on the board here, the top 3 codes are E, S, and A. So it's enterprising at 6, social at 3, and artistic at 3. That's your Holland Code. And then what it does then, it's going to tie you to careers that has that personality. Okay. So again, I'm not going to explain it more because I want to move on, but you'll be able to find more of this out if you actually try it and find it. You'll like some assessments better than others. So choose the ones you like and that feel like it's really getting you. Okay. So a future, Kamalani, you ask about what sites provide valid self-assessment. Well, Futurology.org, Kamalani, is not an assessment site. We are a service program for CUSD. I'm just telling you some sample assessments, not offered by us, by other people. So the Holland Code here, I'm driving you to a website, or the college planning assessment is by Dr. Antonoff. The ones, we like those, okay? I'm also giving you ones that are free, okay? If you want to go buy and spend some money on other assessments, you can do that, okay? So again, I give you access on our website at futurology.org/locker with some valid assessments that are good. Here's another one. Okay, this one is called 16 Personalities. It takes about 12 minutes to take. And this one is more of an agree or disagree. Where do you fit when they ask you these questions? It shouldn't take that long, and it's going to give you kind of, are you more extroverted? Are you more observant? Do you think or you judge more? And then from there, it kind of gives you some personality, okay? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's who you are, and then what goes and what's associated with that, okay? So really good questions. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on it. What you need to do and what your action item is to try some of these and see where it takes you. Did you learn some more stuff about yourself? Did you tie it to a career or a school? Okay, so again, this is one called 16 Personalities. Find the ones you like and take those. Now, when you meet with my counselors and I, okay, and I'm still here. When you meet with my counselors and I, depending on where you are, if you're a ninth grader coming in and you don't know where you are, we'll do some assessments with you based on kind of what you're telling us. We might help you figure this out, whether it be a career assessment, a college planning assessment, and we might give you some of those to help us help you. But if you come in already doing some of these, it makes our job easier and we can help you even more because we get more specific. Okay, so if you guys can do that, you're going to be one step ahead in this game. And again, that most important hour, if you guys can spend an hour of self-reflection, you're going to be further along in this process. Okay, all right, moving on. So what I want to do next is talk about, and keep the questions coming, is the next one, when we talk about this, is to do what I call fit research, okay? So when we talk about doing fit research, is about finding those best fit options, things that are going to work for you. And we break them into 4 categories. We have one is academic, okay? When we talk about academic, is the school going to meet your academic needs? And it could be from a bunch of different, will I be challenged but maybe not overwhelmed? Or maybe you want to be overwhelmed. How hard do I want to work academically? For some students, they want to work extremely hard as they worked in high school. For others, they want a better balance between social and academic. So again, depending on where you are in that spectrum is going to change what school you kind of go after. And if you don't think about those things, you'll have a rude awakening when you go to a school that's really competitive and cutthroat when you weren't expecting it. So again, that's why you have to do this fit research. What's my ideal learning environment? Do I want a small and intimate class? Do I like large lecture halls? I like the large lecture halls because I can sit in the back and not be bothered, and I can still learn on my own. From a social or campus culture perspective, how do you fit in on the campus? Are people commuting? Are they not commuting? What kind of demographics are there? What's the town and city like around that? So again, this is the kind of stuff about doing this research that falls on you guys. So step 2 after your self-expertise are about these best fit options and doing that research. Financially, can you afford the cost of it? How do I get merit-based scholarships? Who offers that? Career or support services, things such as how do they help me achieve my career goals, which is an important factor. Do they have career recruitment? A lot of people like USC because they have some great campus recruitment from companies in the area. And a lot of people go talk about that, and they talk about the networking. So what's important to you, and as you look at that, okay? So this can have a big effect because a school that fits typically means a better experience and a better future for you. So you have to do the research. Too many times people don't put in the research, and again, they're shocked when they get to the school that they want to go, and they go, oh my God, I didn't know it snowed in North Carolina, like my son who says Duke, and I pull it up because he just said that the other day. I don't know if he'll like that it snows there because he's not used to snow. I don't know. If he doesn't do his research or doesn't visit it, he's not going to know that. Okay. Okay. So as part of this best fit research, okay, we want to look at college criteria now. So now we start to talk about, those were the 4 categories of the best fit research. Now we're talking about the criteria. Let's break it down. Are we talking a 4-year or 2-year school, public versus private? What's the actual location? What is the weather like? How big is the school or how small is the school? So these are all the college criteria. And it's really important, just as we had that assessment early on where we ranked what's important, you need to start ranking these things. What's important to you? Is the reputation of a school very important to you? Do you care if it has fraternities or sororities on campus? What's the safety like? So you have to go through all the different criteria and understand what options are available to you when we look at a school. You know, for some people go like, well, shoot, I wanted my car at school. And then you found out that they don't allow freshmen to have cars on campus. Oh my God, I didn't know that. Even little things like that. So again, what's important to you? You have to ask yourself the right questions, okay? And when you do that, you'll be able to understand. And it might be as simple as too, like there's schools out there, it's okay, do you want an out-of-state school, in-state, Cal State? Do you want a specialized school or a vocational school? Would you be interested in a community college, okay? How close is too close? Do you need to be close to your family or not? Do you want a college town experience like at Notre Dame? I don't know. So again, these are some options that you have that you need to think about and consider. And again, ultimately rank, right? All right, so that's step 2, guys, is those best fit options. We're gonna move on to step 3 now, okay? And again, ask me your questions. I'm still here, ask those questions, have them come in, anything in particular for you, okay? All right, so step 3, and again, I'm trying to simplify this process, and we'll do a recap and a check-in, okay, is what I call deal breakers, okay? And these are, for some people, they're more like preferences. They don't know, they don't know if they're deal breakers or not, or preferences are you'd like to have it, but it's not necessarily something I would still go to that school even if it didn't have that. So the deal breakers are what we call non-negotiables or must-haves. So when you do some college search or use some search tools, they'll be called must-haves or non-negotiables. I call them deal breakers. Like if this school didn't have this, I wouldn't go there. So, you know, and on my slides, I just have, you know, if there wasn't a hospital on campus because maybe you wanted to go into pre-med, like that's important to you, then I wouldn't go to that school. Or I need to study abroad. For some people, it's I need to paint my face and go to this school. You know, I need to go to a football game or a basketball game. Or, you know, again, I have Duke on here because my best friend from school, high school went to Duke. My son now wants to go to Duke. I almost went to Duke. Do you want to paint your face and be a Cameron crazy? So when you go to a school like that, do they have that type of atmosphere? Or, you know, you're a Georgia fanatic like my old neighbor, and he watches every football game and he paints his face and he does the whole deal with that. I got a question coming in. What's the best way to research schools fit, such as financial aid? Rick, we'll get there. I'm not there yet. I'm just trying to paint the picture before we start the search process. But we'll talk about ways you can start researching schools, okay? But I'll get there. So thank you for that question. We'll hit that, okay? So again, is it a deal breaker for you? You know, do you really need to have that at the school? Is it something that is that you need to have? So before I even say that, I'm going to actually ask a question out there. If you know, does anybody here, can you chat it and have a deal breaker? Like, I must have this to go to that school. I'll give you an example. For me, I wanted to play college soccer. It was a deal breaker if this college that I was going to go to didn't have a Division I soccer program. I ended up going to a school. I played Division I soccer. That was a must-have or a deal breaker for me. If it didn't have that, I wasn't going to that school. So that was one. The other one for me was it had to be co-ed. You know, for some of you go like, isn't that? No, not all schools are co-ed. So those were two deal breakers for me. Do you have a deal breaker? And by the way, Mona, this goes about an hour and then some questions at the end. Okay, and that was kind of, you know, it was promoted as that, but I usually stay on a little bit longer if people want to hang out with me. Okay, so if you have a deal breaker, please chat it in. If you don't, then just say I don't have one yet. Okay. And if you don't have one yet, this is the kind of stuff and a reason why you take assessments. I don't have any deal breakers. Maybe you haven't thought about it. You need to dig deeper inside yourself. Great, Davis must have a drum line I can participate in. Fantastic. That's very specific. Co-ed, Kiku, great, and no severe weather. So what's severe? Like hurricanes or snow? So that's even digging deeper. So Kiku, tell me if which one is it? Price for Rick? Okay. Now price, Rick, price is the total cost of attendance or what you ultimately will pay. Okay, Christy, great, in a broad program. Major city, excellent. Zane, chemistry major. Okay, Zane also, I would even say dig deeper. How about if it has a chemistry major but not the right classes you want to take? I would even look into deeper than that. Eileen, no problem. Ryan, perfect. I made this slide for you then. Hospital on campus. There it is. How did I know? 6 months of snow, Kiku. Okay, that's perfect. That's good to know. Okay, now, so here on this slide, here's just a sample of something that we would, again, I have this. There's another, it's called the College Selection Questionnaire. I have this on our website where all the slide and the recording is. For example, if you wanted to look at this and say, okay, it's a worksheet, and I go, all right, I would take this. I want a major city. So who said major city? So Christy would be like, okay, yes, I want a major city. I don't want a small town. So let's pretend I'm Christy. Christy, what else would I cross out on here on environment? Do I want a college town? You know, all right, I would do this because it's close to a city. And this is another way, again, another assessment. And then when we look at campus atmosphere here, I'm techie, so okay, I want a techie-oriented school, or sports as a big school. I want a party school and big fraternities. Like, what is it that you want in a campus atmosphere? Or if I was doing this on the landscape, I would say I want beaches. I went to school by a beach. I don't want a desert or a plain. I don't want a lake. I'll take a river. Anything like that to help you get closer to what you're looking for. So again, this is a college selection questionnaire from Admission Possible that I like, that I posted for you guys. Again, it's just another tool that you can use to kind of go through to see what you're looking for. And again, some of these might be preferences, and for some of you, it's a deal breaker. Once you start defining your deal breakers, some of you might have only 2 deal breakers. I had 3. I thought football, having a big college football program, was a deal breaker, and it really wasn't. It was a preference, because I ended up going to school that didn't even have a college football program, okay, which worked out for me because as a soccer player, we didn't have to share the training room with football players, which made it really nice. So again, this is another way to figure out if it's a preference for you or is a must-have or non-negotiable or a deal breaker. Okay, so when we talk about deal breakers, again, something really important to find out for you. Okay, so I'm going to clear that up and we're going to move on. All right, and again, some of those deal breakers were great. Again, Nicole, all these items are at, they're in a lot of my slides. You'll see them at the bottom where I say right here, you see www.cosd-futurology.org/locker. Okay, that's where it will be. It's on these slides. So go to our website, and then there is a tab that says Webinar Locker. That's where this recording will be, the slides will be, and all these assessments. Okay. All right. And there's more out there. I only put a few up there, okay, because I didn't want to overwhelm you. Okay. But I'm sure I'm already doing that. All right. So moving on. So step 4 now, we're going to move to step 4. It's about matchmaking. Okay. So step 1, and we'll review it at the end, was about self-expertise, self-discovery. Step 2, we were talking about your best fit options. What are the options out there? Step 3 is about finding those deal breakers for you. Step 4 is about matchmaking. And Rick will talk about now getting into searching, and we'll do that in a second. So let's talk about the state of the nation of college admissions, okay? So right near, I have this pie, okay? It's scary out there for a lot of people. I don't know if you've seen some of the admissions news coming in from UC schools and some of the Ivy Leagues. Harvard actually just dropped under 5% acceptance rate. So that's really crazy. The UCs had 5 UCs had over 100,000 applications. So it sounds crazy out there, but it's really not that crazy when you think about it. Who knows what the average admissions rate for colleges are? And if you look at my pie graph here, the great news is, if you see it right here, this spot here, that smiley face, that's colleges accepting at least half of its applicants. Guys, the admissions rate for most colleges, the average admissions rate is 66%. Okay, that's quite high. Yet the news we hear today are about, especially in California, about the UC schools are so hard to get into and some of these Ivy Leagues. Yeah, well, that's where it's really competitive. But it is good news. So the average admissions rate is 66%. So if I stick that in here, 66, that's great news. That happy smiley face in my document. So really, the colleges that accept under 20%, this little yellow arrow right here, if you can see it, it's few and far between, guys. Only 20% admit under 50%. Only 20% of the colleges. Okay, there's only about 70 colleges themselves that admit fewer than 25%. Okay, so there is great news out there. Okay, there's only about 14 to 15 colleges that admit under 10%. And those are the Ivy Leagues, Princeton and Columbia and those schools like that, Stanford. Okay, so the admissions or the state of the nation is good. It's a great thing. So we're in a good position. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that. But the idea is we have a great chance. We have a great opportunity. Okay, so what I want to teach you guys and talk to you about is it's really important that you know where you stand in this process. You need to understand what your credentials are. When I say credentials, we're talking about your academic credentials, your GPA, your test scores, the classes you've taken. Because a lot of times, some of those hard schools to get in, and there's 15 that are under 10%, that is maybe you shouldn't even be applying because you haven't taken the right classes or you don't have the right credentials. Also, knowing where you stand is really important. We talked about it. What are your preferences? What are your deal breakers? What feels right for you at a particular school? And then the school themselves, what are they about? And you have to do that research, okay? So when we talk about that, I'm going to show you kind of a way to go about doing it. And again, I'm going to briefly state and talk about it even this year because I saw the numbers at the UC schools. I'm sure you have friends right now that they go, I even have a friend, a kid I tutored not that long ago. She got into Berkeley, but she didn't get into Irvine. Okay, so it's crazy out there, in some schools, but overall, it's college admissions could be a good thing. Okay, I don't want you to think of it as a game of winners and losers, and people do that quite often. They go, "Hey, I got into here, I'm a winner," and the other kid's like, "I didn't get into there, I'm a loser," and it's not really about that. There's some great colleges out there that would be happy to have you. That would be a great fit for you. So again, if we start with you first and not the school, we're going to have a better experiences. And a lot of these colleges that you don't even know about are going to love to have you as a student. And regardless of the school, okay, regardless of school, there's so many things you can do in college that doesn't matter the name of the school. You can stay up late in your dorm eating pizza at any school in the country. You can study abroad at so many different schools. It's not just at 5 schools you get to study abroad at. Somebody mentioned to be in a band or drum line, but let's just say you wanted to be in a band. You can be in a school's marching band at hundreds and hundreds of schools. You can learn on your own. You can have experiential learning at so many different schools. You can sit with a professor at any college in the country. So again, there are things that you can do no matter the name of the school. But when we talk about matchmaking, we want to take it a step further, okay? So as we talk about matchmaking, we're going to start with the search process. So Rick, I know you asked about this, and where do we start with that? Well, the first thing I always tell students, and I know one of my counselors, Kristen, she always like to say, guys, you need to think big. Well, when we first start the process, when you're first starting out, we think big. We kind of try to include so many different schools from a lot of different options because that's what we want to do first. And as we start to narrow it, then when we apply as a senior, we'll actually narrow our list down. Kamalani wants to know, is it true that colleges look at the letter grade before calculating the weighted, unweighted GPA? Kamalani, like each school does something a little different. Ultimately, though, they're going to look at your GPA. They'll still look at your GPA as well as the classes you're taking and that grade in that class. So it's kind of a combination of things. And it also depends on what school you're talking about. Okay, so different schools, large flagship universities, they get so many applications that a lot of times, if you don't have the right GPA, they might not even look at those grades or those classes you're taking. Okay, so it's really going to depend on the school. So again, as we do this research and we talk about this, you're going to need to understand what that school you're talking about, Kamalani. So if you actually gave me a school, you can actually go find out what they're looking at and how much weight they put on those factors, such as the rigor of your classes, the actual classes I'm taking in that letter grade versus the GPA. Okay, so that's really important, but really good question. So again, as we think big, the first thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is to use a search tool in this process, okay? And here's some search tools, and on that site right here, I have more search tools on this spot on our website, but also where this webinar will be are these search tools, okay? So you're going to want to use a search tool. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share you a search tool and actually show you. I'm going to show you Naviance Supermatch. It's one you have access to right now as a student in our district, okay? And when we do, I'll just show you the search tool now. So I'm going to share my screen, okay? So give it a second. I want to make sure you can see it. It's going to look a little funky for a second, but hopefully you'll get to there. So I'll wait a second so you can kind of get to my screen because there's always a delay in this. All right, so you should be able to see my screen now, and I'm in Naviance. So if you log into your Naviance account, you're going to see all these tabs up here: courses, colleges, careers, about me, my planner. Okay, now I'm in the colleges tab, and I'm going to show you a search tool that you guys have access to. It's free for you, and there's other free ones I'll talk about in a second. But one's called Supermatch. My counselors love this one, but we also use other ones. If you've been to our College List Jumpstarts, if you're going to one, we're actually having a College List Bootcamp for Rising, or actually for seniors, coming up in August that I highly recommend you go to. We're going to show you some search tools. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes doing this one tool, but I'm going to show you what it's about. And Rick, you asked about a search tool. So you go into Supermatch or College Supermatch College Search. And what you're going to find here is a lot of the things that we talked about. If you look on your left-hand side are a lot of these categories that we're talking about. Location, majors, scores, school size, campus setting, all this stuff. So one of the things I suggest, so I mentioned earlier, if you had a high impact hour, what could you do? Well, self-discovery or self-reflection is really good. The second high impact hour, I would say, is use some college search tools. So if you just had 2 hours in the college search process, one would be self-reflection and two would be using a search tool like Supermatch or College Board's Big Future or College Raptor, and spend an hour, okay? Because if you can actually use this tool, you can actually start narrowing it down. I'm going to actually head back to I'm going to stop searching. I'm going to head back to my slides because I want to show you. Oh, I lost my slides, guys. So let's just see here. All right, guys, I'm experiencing some technical difficulties, so hold off on a second while I get my slides back. They disappeared on me. And welcome to technology here. But while I'm waiting for my slides, I'm going to check the chat, see if there's any other questions here. So I'm going to take you through a sample profile of a student, and then we're going to use Naviance to kind of filter the search for this student, okay? And that's what I want to do for you, okay? Oh, you want to see my face, Kim? Sure, there it is. If you want, notice all my banners in the back. I'm in my office now, so yeah, take a look, enjoy. I'm still waiting. So I'll talk and I'll move on from the conversation. We'll just kind of talk about some other things. So as we use some search tools, so again, there's a couple that you'll find. Naviance Supermatch. You'll have all the criteria you're going to search for. Again, if you know your deal breakers, if you know what your preferences are, you'll be able to do the search a lot easier. So before you get into there, if you can have thought about that first, it's going to make it a lot easier, okay? Here we go. It's still... All right, I'm going to share my desktop again because it's not uploading to this platform. And I will share my slides that way. Okay. So hopefully you not see my face anymore, and we're going to be back on my slides here. And you're probably experiencing a couple different, there we go. All right. All right, so hopefully you'll be back. Okay, now you're actually seeing my screen again. So here we have is the case study. We've got Justin here. I don't know if he looks familiar or not. For some of you, he might look familiar. He's got some sunshine in his pocket, okay, if you know that reference. And he can't stop the feeling, but anyway. So Justin, here's his grades. It's 3.9 GPA weighted, 3.66, got a 27 ACT. He really is interested in environmental engineering. He loves math. So you can read his profile here. He's really adventurous. He doesn't give up. He's pretty peaceful. His passion is surfing. He was in junior lifeguard, so he loves the water. He's been in Young Life, which is kind of more of a Christian organization or a group. That's Justin. Now, I didn't put every profile piece of Justin in here, and maybe you don't know JT like I know JT. But if we were actually going to start the search process for Justin, okay, and use Supermatch. So now I'm going to switch over to Supermatch. It's going to take a second. And we took Justin's information into account when we were on Supermatch. I'm going to start by looking at location. So if I'm looking at location for Justin, being that, and again, I'm going to do it really quickly, but being that surfing is his passion, he's about the water and beaches and everything, I'm going to add California as a location he would want to have in his profile. And once I click California there, you're going to see some schools pop up on the screen, okay? So that'll happen in a few seconds. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a state like Florida where there's some great beaches and there's some surfing there. I might pick a state like my home state of New Jersey. Whether you know it or not, there's a lot of great beaches there. I might pick North Carolina. So you're going to start to see schools pop up based on what I'm clicking. So right now I'm using location as one. So let's just say I pick 4 locations, okay? Now, if you look at the top of the screen, it says you can make this, how important is this to you? I'm going to make this a must-have, okay? So this is a must-have because passion of surfing and beaches and water, and now you can see UCLA is at the top of the list. Okay, so now I have location. Now I'm going to put in majors because he's totally about environmental engineering. I'm going to, as if you see me do it, put environmental engineering in. Okay, and I'm going to add for now just all environmental engineering majors. So now what you're going to see is other schools are popping up. Now I got Florida State in here, New Jersey Institute of Technology, okay, because I put engineering. Now, he also said he loves business and math. So I can also put business and math in here. Now, it says, how important is this to you? Well, let's just say he loves it so much, it's a must-have. Maybe it's a deal breaker. So, guys, if you have deal breakers on something, in a lot of these search tools, you can make them a deal breaker by just clicking must-have. Okay, so now I have University of Miami popping on the list, or University of Central Florida. I also have Stanford here, okay, or UC San Diego, as I scroll down. So you can see some of the schools. So hopefully you guys are seeing this. So now I can pop in my scores. So Justin had a 3.6. This is on unweighted scale. He had a 27, I believe, and he had a 1250 SAT. So when I pop in that, notice Stanford went away. Stanford went away because my grades and test scores weren't good enough for it to be on my list. Now I have Florida International, University of Central Florida, NGIT, back in New Jersey. I have LMU, and I only just put in some characteristics. Again, you might put, Rick, you mentioned tuition and fees or paying for it. You might put in what you want to pay. I can pay up to this much. This is where you start to put financial aid information if you want. Now, I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. If school size was important, maybe you want a big size or a small school. If you put small schools here, then you'll see something else come up. You might put in, if you want Greek life, or like I said, for me, a deal breaker was Division I soccer. I might have to put in men's soccer and Division I, and then it'll actually sort to only schools that had Division I soccer in it. So these are the kinds of things you can do. So now for Justin, his schools are popping up based on his must-haves, which are location, the location, because I have him by near the water, in states that have great beaches. And so that's really important to Justin. Okay, and we can go through all these, and I'm not going to do that here, but that's what you need to do. So again, if you've gone through your best fit options, if you've gone through your deal breakers, you know a little bit more and assess a little bit more about what your majors are, your career interests, those type of things. And along the way too, guys, if you're doing internships, if you're taking classes at school through California CCA Advantage or CC Advantage, where they have classes like engineering classes or forensic science or anything like that happening at your school beyond just taking an AP class, you're going to know more of what you want. And these are the steps you need to take. So as we, what I call matchmake, That's what you're doing with Supermatch, is you're trying to match. And here that you can see, and I'm not going to take you through every piece of it, but it says 100% match. Why? Because it matches me on location, majors, and my scores. And then when you actually look deeper into Florida International on this quick studies, you're going to see the GPA average is 3.6. It's a public school. How much does it cost? And then if I really like the school, I can add it to my list. So if you're watching me, I'm going to click add the colleges that I'm thinking about, and it adds to my list. I can also pin it. And if I can pin all the schools I really like and learn more about them. So when you click on them in Naviance or in Big Future or College Rapper, you can learn more about the school. So let's say I want to learn more about Florida International. I can find out all the different majors. I can find out what it costs. Rick, you asked about financial aid and how much it costs. You can find those things out. That's the fit research and the research you need to do. If you're not doing that research and you didn't do it, the school should not be on your list, or it shouldn't stay on your list if you didn't do the research. And you can remove the schools from the list. You can add them. You can find out, again, how much aid is awarded to schools, what is room and board, what's the total cost of attendance, and you can start doing that. I don't like students ruling out a school based on financial yet, because you haven't filled out the FAFSA. You don't know how much aid you're going to get. So what I would recommend is keep the school on, go to the school's financial aid calculator, determine your expected family contribution. And some of you are going like, what is all this jargon? If you don't know what that jargon is, you should go to a financial aid webinar that we did and rewatch that, or you should go to something we're going to do in the fall about financial aid if you don't know what those mean. But you should find out what your EFC is, use the net price calculator of the school, and find out what it actually would cost you to go to school. And you'll be curious to find out that sometimes an out-of-state private school might cost you less money. Okay, so this is where you start doing the research and adding the schools together. So if I check out my Supermatch and I've pinned some schools and I've had my deal breakers, a list will come out for you. You can save that list over here in the top left-hand corner. You'll be able to save a list. You'll be able to save multiple searches. You'll be able to check different deal breakers out if you narrowed it down by size. So again, this is a great search tool to use. Okay. And for Justin's case, he can then say bye to some of these schools on his list, if you get that InSync reference there, and find schools that fit him based on campus setting, the selectivity of getting into that school, and he'll be pretty fine for that. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to actually take this off my screen share and head back to my screen share and show you my slides. Okay, so here's Justin now. So we're back to my slides. And here's Justin. We just kind of looked at what he was all about. We used Naviance. We did a quick search. Okay. Now what we need to do is come up with a list for Justin. Okay. Now, one of the big mistakes a lot of students make, okay, now again, Justin looked at location, some of the programs, activities. We didn't do size for Justin, but if he wanted a smaller school, some other schools like some of the UCs, if he wanted a small school, the UCs would fall off the list, okay, because they're bigger schools, okay. The next thing in this process, and the fifth step and the final step as we kind of wrap it up, is to shape and narrow your list, okay? And this is really hard for a lot of students, okay? And this is probably the most important part when we're starting, especially for my juniors, before you become a senior, this summer, you really need to do this. You need to tier your list into the 3 categories. There's reach, target, and safety. I'm going to quickly explain what they are. Reach schools, and a lot of you have heard this, or dream schools, you either fall below the profile of the admitted students, or maybe you meet them, but you have a low chance of acceptance. Not because you're not a good student. You might have a perfect GPA of 4.2, But it's because the school is so competitive. There's so many applications and the acceptance rate is low. So for example, if you were applying to Harvard, it's less than 5% that you get in. The majority of the valedictorians in the country won't get into Harvard. Okay. So that's really important to understand that. Okay. I'm going to just check the chat. How do you decide if a good fit school is a reach school? And I'm doing that, Rick, right now. So we'll get that. And Kim, great. Timberlake. All right. So I got everybody on it. And okay, you can see my screen still. So again, as we figure this out, a reach school, guys, is going to be a school that has an under 35% acceptance rate. And you fall below the profile of the students who are admitted. So when you do your college search, when you use Naviance or Big Future, you can find out what the average GPA is, what the average test score is. You can find all this academic information. You need to look at it. The problem is a lot of students, they don't look at it. They go, UCLA is on my list, and they didn't even look at the data. Guys, if you don't look at the data, then you're going to struggle with your college list and creating a balanced list. So again, reach schools are ones you're reaching for. The target schools, you actually fall within the range of admitted students, the 50% profile of those students. So for example, if you had a 3.5 and the average range of the GPA is around a 3.4 or 3.5, you're right in the GPA range. If your test score is 1,000 on the SAT and their average range is 900 to 1,100, you're right in that average range. Then it's a target school academically, or that profile. And that's the acceptance rate is usually 35 to 75%. Okay. And then there's the safety schools. And those safety schools are where you exceed the midpoint or the mid-range of the students. You have a high chance of acceptance. Okay. That's what a safety school is. And if you do this, and it's kind of a systematic approach, there is a science to it. And if you put this and you mesh this against your list and you put these schools in those tiers, you're going to have a better list and you have better success rate of getting into your schools. When you ultimately create your list, and we'll talk about it, you kind of want to have this ratio, and you'll see it here. For example, you have 1 to 3 applications for reach schools, 2 to 6 for target, 1 to 3 for safety. So for example, if you're applying to 12 schools, you would have 3 reaches, 6 targets, and 3 safeties, roughly. And usually we customize it with our students based on the student themselves. That's kind of what you want to have. Most students are putting 9 reaches and 3 targets. So they actually end up not getting into most of their schools. You should get into 75% of the schools you apply to, provided you have a good list. Most of the kids we see, or we've seen, they actually aren't getting into a majority of the schools because their list is faulty. So if we set up our list and we create better balance, you'll have a better opportunity to get into the schools. Be happy that you're getting into schools. Now, when we create the schools on the list, we'll talk a little bit more, some do's and don'ts on that. So that's kind of tiering your list, guys. Okay. Now, let me show you this part of it. So now here's some of the data. So this is data. Again, I have these slides. So when you look at, for example, UC Berkeley here, okay, you'll see, if you see my cursor here, if the top list is Berkeley, Berkeley has, well, actually it's lower than 20% now. It's in the reach category. The average GPA is about 4.4. The test score is over 30 on the ACT. If you have a GPA of 3.5 and your test score is 25, Berkeley would be a reach school. And in some cases, you probably might not want to apply to Berkeley. You don't have a big chance of getting in, okay? So understand, when we look at data, you have to use data to make your reach, target, and safety list. If you're not using data and you're using your gut or your heart, your list is going to be off. Okay. If you look at all the UC schools here, the majority of them are reach schools for everybody. UC San Diego, they all, even this year, I looked at the numbers. UC Irvine is probably a reach school for everybody because it had under 35% acceptance rate this year. So the only one with a big acceptance rate is Merced at 74%. Okay, so for the most part, UC schools are reach schools. So for some of you students with higher GPAs and test scores, some of them are targets, okay, but they're not safeties. Okay, a lot of people apply them as, oh, that's my safety school because I have a 4.0 GPA. Well, that's the average is 4.2, so it's not a safety for you. So you have to kind of come to grips with that and put your schools in categories, okay? For the target schools in the Cal States, again, here's the list. It's hard to see on my slides here, but for example, Bakersfield, okay, I'm going to show you from this perspective. Bakersfield has an average ACT of 19 and an average SAT of 900, 3.2 GPA. If Justin wanted to apply to Bakersfield, it would be a safety school for him because it accepts the majority of the students. His numbers are higher than that, okay? So as we look at that and we look at the Cal States, and I'm giving you the UC and the Cal State data so you actually, especially my juniors, you can create your reach, target, and safety numbers based on your profile, your GPA test scores, and the Cal States and the UCs, okay? For some people go, well, oh, Cal Poly SLO is a target school. No, for most kids, it's a reach school. Actually, for every student, it's a reach school, okay? So you have to put those in those categories, okay? So that is how you actually credential or academically credential your list and put it in those tiers. So what I have on the screen now on this slide is kind of a shortened version of how you can organize and put it all together. So as we shape and narrow, this is just a quick form that you can put your schools in different categories. We use this in some of our boot camps or jump starts to help our students start organizing the data. Again, it's on the website. Okay, so please use this to start organizing your data. Okay. What I did here for Justin is I gave you a sample of what it would look like for Justin. So based on the search that I did in Naviance, again, I just fast forwarded it that he did the best fit research. He used Naviance and some search tools. And then I put the information into this case study, into this, this Word document. To organize the data. So you can see here now on the screen that I have the reach schools of Cal Poly SLO, USC, and that have UC San Diego or UCI for Justin. Justin had a really good GPA, but if you look at the data, so I put the GPA and the SAT, ACT profile of the students, that all his reach schools, his GPA is below those schools. His test scores are below. And the acceptance rate are below 35%. So these Cal Poly, USC, and UC San Diego or UCI are reach schools for Justin, okay? And then in this document too, why is it a good fit for me? I made a few notes for Justin. You know, one, well, USC, I was trying to be funny. It's close to the Lakers and the Clippers, okay? For UCI, Anteaters, that's where I went to college. So Anteaters, baby, sure, great. For some of the other schools, surfing, the beach, you'll see that here. So for his target schools, you'll see some schools in Florida International has a 61% acceptance rate, 3.6 GPA. His test scores are higher. And I got some questions coming in. Great. I'm going to answer those for a second. I'm going back and forth through the chat, so be patient with me, please. I've got Elon University in North Carolina. You can see that 54% acceptance rate. And then you see some safety schools like Humboldt, 80% acceptance. And then I made a lot of good notes. Why is it a good fit? It's a spirit of adventure is kind of their tagline. It overlooks the Pacific Ocean, so he can surf. There's surfing classes, one of the best surfing colleges. It has environmental engineering. So Humboldt is a great match. It's a safety school. And the schools on this list, by the way, if you're going to put schools on your list and eventually apply, you got to want to go there, and it should have the things you want. Don't put it on the list if you don't want to go there. And I have Florida Gulf Coast as a safety school in Suffolk. So you can see this is a great finished product of the schools he would apply to, because he's done the research, he's looked at them, they're financially fit, they have the academics he wants, socially they fit, etc. And it's a great college list. And he's going to get into a lot of these schools, as opposed to apply to some of the other schools that came out like NYU and Stanford. Well, he can only apply to 3 Reach schools. He can't apply to all of them, because then he's going to only get into maybe, if at all, 1. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, guys. This is the kind of the finished product, okay? All right, I'm going to jump into and just see if there's another question. Somebody wants to know. Nope, no questions here. I got one through email. Let me check that really quickly. I'll have to get to that after. I don't see it right now. So again, now we have on the screen, this is just another search tool. It's called College Express. And what I like about College Express is they have different categories. So you can they have different lists, like best undergraduate colleges overall, or most beautiful college campuses, top 10 activist schools, or colleges with unusual majors, or they have lists by major. So on College Express, you can actually look in schools for different categories if it's really important to you, if there's a certain category that's important to you. So that's why I like College Express. And as you go through this process, guys, I understand that this one is about your test scores. Maybe you can improve your test score. So you can change, for example, maybe you're only at a 26 where University of Cincinnati is, but if you actually jump to a 31, NYU now fits into your demographic. So you can change the trajectory of some of your schools and what category they fit in if you change maybe your score. So if you go from a 28 to a 31 on your ACT, or go up 300 points on your SAT, some of those schools will change. So you might change the definition of the reach, target, and safety for you based on that. But until you have that score, you can't do that. It's all nice. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to get a 31. But if you don't even prep and do some work to get it, you're going to be stuck at a 28. And so you have to stick with that, okay? So you can't just go on potential, guys. Understand that. All right, so here's some quick college list don'ts. So when you're making your college list, hopefully that made sense, guys, when we looked at Justin's list. If you have any questions, go ahead, please ask those. And again, I'm doing it really quickly because I want you to at least understand the 5 steps to doing it. We're now in the shaping and narrowing of your list. This is where my juniors, this summer, you're shaping and narrowing. If you haven't done the other work, the first 4 steps, you better do that by this summer, because you need to start shaping and narrowing the list. So when we talk about shape and narrow, here's just some ways we don't make a college list. My girlfriend or boyfriend is applying to that school, or they go there, so I'm applying there. That's not a great reason to put a school on your list. It's got to have the characteristics of the things we've already talked about. It's on my list because it's easy to get into. Again, if it doesn't have what you want, or they have deal breakers, it shouldn't be on your list. Or I'm applying it to Princeton because it's hard to get into. Well, if it doesn't have the things you want, if it's not the kind of academic climate you want, then you shouldn't be applying to Princeton. Okay, so that's a bad reason to have it on your list. Everyone in my school applies, and I know this district, and a lot of people apply to certain schools because everybody applies to those. Not a good reason to create a college list with that school on it. Don't rule out expensive schools yet, okay, folks? Again, we should use the idea that until we fill out the FAFSA and we know the financial constraints of the school, keep it on your list. And then the idea that I'm applying to more reach schools to increase the likelihood that I'll get admitted to one. It's not a gamble, guys. You don't apply to 15 reach schools with the hope of getting into one. It's a losing game if you do that. Again, follow that ratio. 1-to-1 or 1-3-1 in the ratio, okay? You'll have better success. You'll get into more schools, okay? Now, the college list dues. Here's some good rules of thumbs. If you want merit aid, if you're looking for scholarship for the school that you don't have to pay back, make sure you're in the top 10% academically of that school. So if you apply to Berkeley, you're not going to be in the top 10% most likely. okay, with a 4.0 or a 1400. Apply to a school like University of New Mexico, okay? Talk to reps, families, and friends. That'll help you come up with your list about the experience, what the school's like. Do a lot of research. We talked about it. Some other two good sites, Unigo, and I like Unigo because it gives student reviews of what a school is like, and the Princeton Review, okay? If you're watching me now, here's a book I really like, The Best 382 Colleges. My friend Rob writes this book. It's a great book. I highly suggest using that. Okay, so do more research, do school searches, click through, go to school websites. Also keep an open mind. Okay, that's really important. A lot of people go, well, I have to go to a very selective school because it's a better school. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of people kind of go in with the idea that the school that's harder to get into is a better school, and it's not necessarily the case. I went to UC Irvine, and when I went, they didn't even have a business major. I thought they did. If I went to a Cal State school, it would have better served my academic interests. And I didn't know that. I thought every school would have the business classes I wanted, and it's not true. Okay, so just because a school is more selective doesn't mean it's better. And also, ultimately, they don't always mean that you'll make more money, okay? It's what you do at the school and how well you do at the school that ultimately becomes more important. Another thing, attend college fairs. Okay, talk to reps at the tables, the schools, visit the tables. The one at CSD is on Monday, October 8th. Tour local colleges. If you can go to a large state school, visit a small private school around here in California, a really good thing to do. Don't eliminate schools that don't meet your needs, eliminate schools that don't meet your needs. Okay, that's a college list too. So if they don't meet your needs, get rid of them. And then for a school to make it on your list, I kind of briefly mentioned it. Make sure you want to attend, you meet all the requirements, and that it has the interest that you want, okay? So when ultimately what it looks like, here's the bullseye. You want to narrow your list down to about 8 to 12 schools when you're coming up on senior years. And it's got to have a good balanced mix of reach, target, and safety schools. After you've done that self-discovery and reflection, that's really important, okay? So what the action plan looks like, guys, from freshman to senior year. So you're taking assessments. And again, I'm going through it quick because I want to get to any final questions. You can look this back up, but this action plan is about taking assessments early on, doing some college visits, going to our events at Futurology, using some search tools. So this summer, my sophomores, try a search tool, do some college visits, do your best fit research. Same with my juniors. You should have a preliminary list, juniors. You should set your deal breakers, define your career goals. So ultimately, you're narrowing and refining your list. So when you come in to see us, we don't have to change your whole list around so you can actually get into some schools. Attend our boot camps, attend our jump starts when we do the college list boot camps, and start your applications and essays and reviewing that this summer, guys. That's all around college list. This isn't about testing and other things. This is just a college list action plan. So when you're a senior, right down here, you're applying in the fall of senior year. You're not testing. You're attending our events, and then maybe you have a one-on-one with us, or you go to our senior drop-ins, or you come to our application boot camps to help you fill out your applications. And then ultimately, you have your college list and you're applying and you're getting in. So as we wrap up, here are the 5 steps again, everybody. 1, self-expertise. 2, best fit options. 3, deal breakers. 4, matchmaking. And 5, shape and narrow. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is what we covered tonight. So I'm going to open it up to some questions for everybody. All right, so Mona, here we go. How do you determine if a certain school values academics as equally or more important as extracurricular? Great question, Mona. You got to talk to the schools where they weight everything. Now, I'm going to tell you overall, the majority of schools are going to value your academics, your important, than your academics, unless that extracurricular, you're a special interest student in the sense that you can throw the football 100 yards, then Princeton might forego that you don't have the perfect GPA, okay? So You got to check with the schools, and a lot of schools are very forthright in coming with what they value the most, whether it's essays, whether it's letters of recommendation, those other things. So you have to do your research. It's all about research, Mona. So college tours, how far in advance? You might be able to take one next week at UC Irvine if there's space. So it really depends on what you're trying to get out of that college tour as well, and how far you have to travel to do that, and who do you want to talk to. Okay, so really good questions. All right, can you clarify which GPA schools look at, weighted versus unweighted, academic only, grades 10 to 12? Well, Karen, it's a very difficult question to answer. A lot of schools are looking at your grades 10 through 11, your weighted and unweighted. They recalculate, they recalculate your GPA the way they want to do it. So a lot of schools will have that. When we're looking in the search tools, a lot of times it's unweighted GPA. When you're looking at the calculations of that UC chart that I gave you on that data, that has weighted GPA on there. So it really depends on where you're looking at and what your tools you're looking at. So what you want to clarify is where are you applying and what they actually look at and consider. But they don't stop at just your GPA. So Karen, a lot of schools will look at your senior year classes that you take still. So it doesn't go in the calculation of GPA, but it still is important because they're looking at your course rigor if it's a very competitive school. So are you going to a competitive school, or you're applying to a competitive school, not so competitive, and that will change as well. Also, some schools will recalculate it based on how many honors credits that they give you as well. So again, that factors in too. So you have to do your research, but really good question. Other questions, guys, as we kind of wrap up. So I know I covered a lot tonight. As more questions come in, I covered a lot, and I covered it fast. You'll get to watch this back. But again, the point of tonight is to touch on a little bit of every step along the way and to get you to take some action, okay? So as we talk about that action plan, I'll kind of scroll back to it again. I really want to see, especially my youngers, my freshmen, my sophomores, doing some of these assessments, really get to understand and self-reflect what's really important to you, because what you don't want to do is have this kind of almost be dictated or beholden to the schools. Well, I think the school wants me to volunteer. And a lot of people make decisions based on that, as opposed to, well, maybe you don't want to volunteer. Well, then don't. You'd rather maybe have a job. Well, then do that. So again, follow what you're finding out is important to you, okay? So again, more questions. Have them come in, please. I'm going to check my email because I saw a question that came in. It said, what if I'm interested in multiple careers at this point? How can I decide or combine them? Great question. Okay, so how I have multiple career interests. Well, one is if you are interested in dance and you're interested in business, make sure that the school has both for you. So again, it all comes back to research. Sometimes we're very lazy in this process. I'm just picking a school because I heard it's good. No, if you're interested in two things on your list, make sure the school has two things. In Justin's case, and sample thing we did, he was interested in environmental engineering and business and math. You can put business, math, and engineering into your search tool. And then look also, what classes would you take? What can you take in dance? What can you take in business and things like that? So you actually have to do your research. So that's one way you can combine them. Make sure your school has both offerings, and you can do that. The other thing you can do is when you do your assessments, kind of see where things cross over. You'll see some crossover. Actually, one that I like is on College Board. Let me see if I'm still sharing my screen here. Let me see if I can go to College Board. I'm having issues with sharing my screen. I'll just tell you, if you go to College Board, which is Big Future, they have a career one where you can combine, they'll help you combine things where they'll have two different categories and you can say, oh, let me be creative here. I want to combine graphic design and gaming, or I want to design or combine gaming with music. And there's opportunities to do that in some of these assessments. So again, for the question that I just got in, I would go to College Board's Big Future and College Board, and they have some career tools over there where they do some of those combinations. But there's a lot out there. That's where you kind of find clear clusters that cross over and when you do your assessments. So again, these questions you guys are asking me, it all comes down to when you start doing some of the stuff I'm asking you to do, your questions will start being answered. You're just asking them because you don't know where to start yet. I'm telling you, start with yourself and start with some of those assessments. Now, some of you that have some ideas, then start doing some more career assessments and using some of those tools, okay? All right, more questions. Oh, some people saying I can't hear. So again, reconnect if you're having trouble. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because that kind of sometimes does that. I'm back now, open for questions. Thank you, Kim, for announcing that. Other final questions as we wrap up? And if not, and you want to take off, go ahead, take off. I will stay on for a couple more minutes if you want to talk a little bit more. What I would highly recommend for those that you go, well, I'm starting from scratch, I would take some Sundays. It takes maybe, take a month. Give yourself a month in June or even a month in May. Take an hour or two on a Sunday, every Sunday for the next month, okay? One Sunday, you're going to do an hour or two of assessments. Another Sunday, you're going to review some of those assessments and look at what's really important. You set some of those deal breakers. Yeah, Kiko, see you tomorrow at the ACT. And take some of those assessments. And the second week, review some of those assessments. The third week, start on the college search tool. Or the third week, do some of those career clusters and combining some careers. And then the fourth week, you're doing a search tool for an hour or two. I'm telling you, you'll be surprised after the month that you have a very good working list, okay? And then maybe that final week, you actually go dig deeper in each of the schools where you click on University of North Carolina, let me find out, or Elon University or Suffolk University, and find out more about that university and do more research about that school. What kind of classes would I take? What kind of organizations do they have? So if you can remove or keep that school on your list and then save it if it stays on your list, remove it if you don't want it on your list anymore. And then in a month's time, you'll have a great working list. You might start out with 50, 60 schools. For my athletes, sometimes they start with 100 schools. And then it becomes 50. And then it becomes 30. Then you start visiting more schools and checking out, oh, I really like a smaller private school, or I like a smaller campus. Then it becomes 15, and then it becomes 8 or 10 or 12. And then you're ready to apply. Okay? And that's what I'll leave with you with. So tonight, take the time, set some action steps up, and hopefully Futurology and my counselors will see you. We'll see you at some events, and we look forward to it. So thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. An hour, hour and a half goes really fast. I've realized. All right. Good night, everyone.